I didn't expect the blood. That's the first thing I remember, not the sound, not the screaming, not even the crash. Just blood, bright and sharp against the midnight snow, seeping from the corner of my brother's mouth as he lay half-curled on the icy pavement like a broken doll. They say trauma makes your mind protect you, softens the harshness with fog or silence. Mine did the opposite. It burned the scene into me in high definition. The windshield like a spiderweb, the smell of burnt rubber and vodka, his phone vibrating endlessly beside him. One text, that's all it was. Tell her the truth tonight, a text from me, and now my twin brother Jamie wasn't breathing. For the first 24 hours, I hated myself more than I thought was humanly possible. Because if he'd listened to me, if he'd told his fiancée, Marie, that he was gay, maybe he wouldn't have jumped into that car, drunk, torn, and spiraling after 10 years of pretending. But here's the part no one tells you: when someone dies, they don't just vanish. They echo, they haunt. Not in a ghost story way, but in the way a half-finished sentence can sit inside your chest for years. At Jamie's funeral, I gave the eulogy. I told the crowd what they wanted to hear: that he was kind, that he loved Marie, that he was a tragic victim of an accident. What I didn't say was that he'd been cracking for years, that he used to come to my apartment at 2 a.m. just to cry in my bathtub and whisper about a boy named Raphael whom he kissed once during a study trip to Spain and never spoke to again. I never told Marie, and I never told our parents because I was too scared. I thought I was protecting him. And now he was gone. But something broke in me that day, not the usual grief break, but something deeper. As I stood in front of all those people, watching Marie collapse into herself and my parents nod solemnly at a version of Jamie that never existed, I realized I was part of the lie that killed him, and that's when I saw him. At the back of the church, half hidden by shadows, was a man I'd never seen before, tall, sharp-featured, with eyes that clung to mine for a second too long. There was something in his stare, not mourning, not shock, but recognition, as if he knew me, as if he knew Jamie. And when I looked again, he was gone. That's where it began, not with the crash, not with the funeral, but with that look, that one look from a stranger at my brother's funeral. That was the first time I felt the world slip sideways, and I should have known right then that Jamie's story wasn't over. That one kiss, the one he'd never spoken of, the one that twisted everything, wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. I couldn't stop thinking about him, the man who looked at me like he knew me better than I knew myself. I tried to push it out of my mind, to focus on the empty feeling that followed Jamie's death, but the thought gnawed at me. Who was he, and why did his gaze send a chill down my spine? I asked around, but no one had seen him leave the church, and no one seemed to recognize his face. But the moment I drove home, alone in the car, the weight of the world pressing down on me, it hit me. I had to know who he was. I needed to understand why his presence felt like a key turning in a locked door that had been sealed shut for years. Over the next few weeks, I became obsessed. I visited the church again, hoping to find something, anything that could explain that look. It was a Tuesday morning when I spotted him again. This time he was sitting at the corner of a local coffee shop, wearing a faded leather jacket, nursing a cup of coffee like he had all the time in the world. I walked by, pretending not to notice, but something inside me told me I wasn't just walking by, I was being drawn in. There was no mistake now. This was the man from the funeral. Without thinking, I turned around, my heart pounding in my chest, and walked inside. I don't know what I expected. Maybe he would ignore me, maybe tell me to leave him alone. But when I approached the counter, his head snapped up, and for a split second our eyes locked again. This time there was no confusion in his stare, just a quiet knowing, like a secret shared between us, an invisible thread binding us together. He smiled, slow and deliberate, before standing up and walking toward me, his movements fluid and effortless. "You're Jamie's sister, aren't you?" he asked, his voice low, almost like he was speaking to himself. I nodded, my throat dry. "Who are you?" It came out sharper than I intended, but I couldn't stop the words. Something about him, the way he carried himself, set off alarms in my mind. This wasn't just some random mourner at a funeral. This was someone who had a deeper connection to my brother, a connection Jamie had never even told me about. His smile faltered, then softened, and he took a step closer. "I'm Raphael," he said simply, like it was supposed to mean something to me. But it did. My breath caught in my chest as I felt everything inside me freeze. Raphael, the boy Jamie had kissed in Spain. The boy Jamie had never stopped talking about in the late night hours when he thought I wasn't listening. Raphael was real. He wasn't just a ghost in Jamie's past. He was here in front of me, and something about this moment felt like a door opening, one I didn't know I was ready to walk through. "I didn't know Jamie had a sister," Raphael continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I knew he was never the same after he met you." He paused, as if weighing his next words carefully. "You never knew, did you, about us?" My heart skipped, my pulse racing. I didn't know what he meant, but I knew something was coming, something that would change everything. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. Raphael's words lingered between us like smoke, curling into places I didn't want to look. You never knew, did you? He repeated, his voice laced with something between sadness and regret. About Jamie and me. I felt a tightness in my chest, not just the weight of grief, but something more, something ancient and buried deep. A flood of memories rushed forward, all the things I'd ignored, dismissed, or never noticed. The way Jamie's hands would tremble when he spoke about that trip to Spain, how his eyes would flicker with something I couldn't name when he told stories about their nights out, the unspoken longing in his voice whenever Raphael's name slipped from his lips. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came. Raphael was staring at me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. I thought I understood what was happening, the closure, the need for the truth to come out, for my brother's secrets to finally breathe. But as Raphael stepped closer, his eyes softened, and I realized this wasn't just about Jamie anymore. It was about something between us. I wasn't just his friend Emma, Raphael said, his voice gentle, but there was a quiet power behind it. I loved him. I loved him in a way he couldn't understand and in a way he didn't know how to love back. At least not until it was too late. The way he said it made it sound like he wasn't just speaking of a past relationship. It sounded like he was still grieving, still holding on to something. The air between us felt like it was stretching, pulling me into a space I wasn't ready to enter. The truth about my brother was painful enough, but what about the truth about Raphael and me? I should have stepped back. I should have told him to leave, to stop, to let me grieve my brother in peace. But the words never came. Instead, I felt my body leaning toward him, a strange gravity pulling me forward. There was something magnetic about him, something raw and alive in his sadness that resonated with the broken parts of me I didn't even know existed. Without thinking, I asked the question that had been gnawing at me since the moment I saw him at the funeral. Why didn't Jamie ever tell me about you? Raphael hesitated. His jaw tightened, and for a moment he seemed far away. Because he was scared, he said quietly. Not of you, not of the world. He was scared of himself, scared of loving me. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd always thought I knew Jamie. We were twins, after all. We shared everything, our secrets, our fears, our dreams, but this wasn't just a secret. This was something deeper, something that had been festering inside him for years, something he couldn't face, something he never told me, his closest person. And then, as if to add salt to the wound, Raphael's next words shattered everything I thought I knew. He was in love with you, Emma, and he didn't know how to deal with it. The words struck me like lightning, so fast, so sharp, I couldn't process them. For a long moment, I simply stood there, frozen. The weight of the world suddenly shifted onto my shoulders. Jamie was in love with me. The thought spun around my mind like a violent storm, each new realization ripping apart everything I thought I knew about my brother, about our bond, about what had been real between us. My stomach churned and I could feel the bile rising in my throat. What? The word barely escaped my lips, broken, disbelieving. Raphael's eyes softened with the kind of sorrow that felt far too heavy for someone so young. He never told you, did he? I always thought you'd know somehow. The way he'd look at you when you weren't paying attention, how he would defend you even when you didn't need it. He didn't just love you as his sister, Emma. He loved you in a way he couldn't explain, a way he couldn't accept. It was the reason he pushed me away, the reason he ran from us, and the reason why in the end he couldn't live with it anymore. I staggered back, the truth choking me, suffocating me. Jamie loved me. My mind screamed for an explanation, something that could make sense of this chaos, but nothing came. Raphael's words were a puzzle with pieces that didn't fit together, and the more I tried to piece them in place, the more broken everything became. I looked at him, searching his face for something, some sign that he was lying or that I'd misheard. But no, the pain in his eyes was undeniable, and so was the pain that twisted inside me, curling into a knot deep within my chest. I didn't know, I whispered, almost to myself. I didn't know. How could I have not known? We were twins. We were supposed to understand each other, to share everything. Yet all this time my brother had been carrying this unbearable truth alone, a secret that he couldn't confide in me because of the very bond we shared. I felt a burning shame, a guilt so fierce it made my hands tremble. Maybe if I had listened harder, looked closer, maybe I could have helped him, maybe I could have saved him. Raphael reached out, his hand hovering near my arm as if afraid to touch me, to cross that invisible line between our griefs. You're not to blame, Emma, you didn't know, but I think Jamie needed you to know now, even if he never could tell you. This, he gestured between us, this is the last piece of him I can give you. His words were raw, a gift and a curse wrapped together, and I could feel the heavy weight of them settling in my chest. The room was suddenly too small, too close, and I found myself gasping for air, drowning in a truth that was so much more than I could bear. One kiss. That was all it had taken for everything to change, one kiss between my brother and Raphael that had set off a chain of events none of us could ever undo. And now I was left to piece together a love story that had never been mine to begin with, but was now inescapably tangled in my soul. The silence between us stretched, taut, and uncomfortable, but neither of us moved. I could hear the steady beat of my heart like a drum in my chest, pounding against the weight of all that had been revealed. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't know how to process any of it. The grief, the confusion, the betrayal that had lodged itself somewhere deep inside me, everything felt like a whirlpool, pulling me under, threatening to drown me in its current. How was I supposed to carry this? How could I ever look at my brother's memory the same way again? And then Raphael did something unexpected. He stepped closer, gently taking my hands in his, the warmth of his touch grounding me in a way that I hadn't anticipated. There was something in his eyes, something that mirrored the ache I felt deep within me. He wasn't just a stranger, he wasn't just someone from Jamie's past. He was part of the same broken puzzle, a piece of my brother's story that had remained hidden, and now I realized part of mine too. I never wanted to hurt you, Emma, Raphael said softly, his voice like a whisper of wind. But I think we both needed to know, to understand. Jamie loved us both. And in the end, maybe that was his tragedy, not just the world that couldn't accept him, but that he couldn't accept himself. The truth hit me again, heavier this time. Jamie loved both of us. And somewhere, buried beneath all the pain, the lies, and the grief, there was a truth I hadn't allowed myself to see. I had loved him back. Not in the way a sister should, but in the way that haunted the spaces between family and something else entirely. I had loved him in ways I hadn't known how to name, in the quiet hours when we were alone and his touch lingered a little too long on my arm, when his eyes would meet mine and there was an unspoken understanding that cut deeper than anything. We had loved each other in a way no one else could ever understand. It wasn't right, it wasn't healthy, but it was real and it was unavoidable. I don't know what to do with all of this, I whispered, my voice breaking. Raphael squeezed my hands, a quiet affirmation that he understood. Neither do I, he replied, his gaze softening. But maybe we start by not pretending anymore. Not pretending that it's all okay, that we didn't love him, or that his love for us didn't shape everything. His words settled into me like a seed, fragile but powerful, a seed of something I had to confront. Not just the pain, not just the loss of Jamie, but the truth that had always been lurking, hidden between the cracks of our shared existence. I felt the truth shift inside me, a strange clarity creeping in, not to erase the pain, but to finally understand it, to stop running from it. Jamie's death wasn't the end of the story. In a way, it was only the beginning. The kiss, the love, the years of silence, they weren't just his burden to bear anymore. They were mine too. And somehow, against all logic, against all reason, I felt the weight of it not as a curse, but as a broken, necessary part of me. As I stood there, my hands still in Raphael, I realized something I hadn't been willing to admit before. I didn't have to have all the answers, I didn't have to fix everything, but one kiss had changed everything. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to start something new. A journey I never expected, a love I never imagined, but one that was undeniably mine. And in that moment, I finally felt the weight of Jamie's absence give way to a strange, bittersweet freedom. It wasn't the end, it was just the beginning.